Hey y'all, and welcome back to another Photography Friday. My name is Jane Corley with Pic Visions, Media Arts and Photography. If it's your first time here, welcome! Make sure to like this video if you learned something new, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you can be notified every time a new video is uploaded every week. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about indoor lighting techniques, how to manipulate natural light, how to use studio lighting. So let's get started on indoor lighting techniques. Indoor lighting techniques can be difficult. It's all about the right equation of natural light, if you have that available in your space, as well as the compilation of studio lights, either on camera or off camera flashes. If you can situate your subject matter in front of or near a natural light source, you will get a clean flush of light across the canvas. By turning off all extra lights, all additional lights, that natural light will become richer. You can also lower the aperture number on your camera settings, and that will accommodate all the light being sucked in by your camera lens with that aperture wide open. Do be careful not to slow down your shutter speed too much. Anything slower than 1/60th of a second is going to give you motion blur, or at least a potential for motion blur. So be mindful not to slow down your shutter speed any slower than 1/60th of a second. Tripods are your friends. This is another thing that will get rid of motion blur potential. If you can mount your camera on a tripod or even a monopod, something that would stabilize that camera, it's going to help you avoid the motion blur provided by your camera, by your hands, by your body, by something going on, by being bumped by something. Tripods are just a good idea, and they make shooting in an indoor space easier, and you end up not having so many pictures that you have to get rid of because you have blur. By using a lower ISO as well, you can adjust the quality of the images. Indoor lighting techniques paired with a lower ISO, so 100, 200, really complement the quality of the image, and they won't be too noisy, they won't have so much grain in them. So if you're shooting in a space that has very limited light, like a musician playing in a bar, or even karaoke with lasers and very brief light source additions, you can raise that ISO, but I would not go any further than 1200 on your ISO, because then you're going to get really grainy images, and the quality is just not going to be what you want. So keep that ISO as low as you can to uphold the quality of your image. Natural light does not compete well with other toned artificial lights. So cooler tones complement well with natural lights, whereas the harsher red and orange and yellowy tones of your normal fluorescent bulbs in your home don't complement well with natural light. So try to avoid putting those flavors of bulbs along with natural lights. You can also check the white balance before you begin shooting. There are apps on your phone that you can check the white balance, but I don't know if they're really 100% reliable. If you really want to step up your photography game, just get one online. They're about 10, 20 bucks. I'll leave a link in the description box to the one that I use, and it really just simplifies and streamlines and makes sure all the guesswork is out of the white balance. And until you get comfortable with your own white balance checking, you can always just use the auto white balance setting on your camera, and you can also just use aperture setting on your camera until you get used to how to set up lights, or the relationship between outdoor light and indoor light as they couple together. You can use the different tones of light though, if that's the look that you're wanting in your photos. The blues of studio lighting bulbs, or the blues of the natural angelic sort of outdoor lighting, that gives a softer look to your images, a more balanced white light onto your image. Using the warmer tones of some fluorescent bulbs that you typically have in your home, that's going to give a warmer tone to your image if that's something that you're wanting to achieve in your photograph. When shooting your subjects indoors, do be mindful of the things that are around you. There are a lot of reflective surfaces that you might not think are present that really are adding to the light in your environment. If you shoot your subject on a white backdrop, that white backdrop is going to act as a reflector of light, whereas a black backdrop is going to absorb or swallow all of the light and cut your light almost in half. Creating a light box is very simple. So do your research, look online. There's a bunch of different kinds of light boxes that you can make yourself for your own studio space that are like free. But by creating a almost cradle of manageable light around your subject. So if you're doing jewelry, if you're selling jewelry online and you're trying to do some product photography, put that product on an enclosed area. So you can use fabric, you can even just put it in a box that is made out of white paper or white fabric, and that's going to reflect the light that's within that space back onto that subject or piece of product, creating a more flattering effect. So just remember, white reflects light and black absorbs light. If you're shooting indoor, say real estate photography, understand that there are reflective surfaces in that home, down to the countertops. If they're granite or some kind of stone, that's going to be a reflective material and bump more light into that environment. Stainless steel appliances, windows and doors that might even just be out of frame, that's going to be flooding that space with more light. Even down to the kind of paint that's on their walls. A matte paint will mute the light. It almost stops it dead in its tracks. Whereas satin paint, which I'm sure you've seen if you ever painted a wall, you have a choice when you go to pick your paint out. The satin paint on the walls is actually going to reflect the light, almost a shiny version of paint, and reflect that light back into the indoor space. So when you're using an on-camera flash, if that's the only light source that you're using, you're going to flatten the subject of your image. You're going to remove all of the natural shadows and highlights, and it's just not going to be the look in the image that you're going to want in the final product. So make sure if you are using an on-camera attached to your hot shoe flash that you have additional light sources to the side and even to the back of the subject. That way you maintain the shadows, the depths, and the highlights that give that contrast between one plane and another within your image. With larger studio lights, this is called either a fill light or a kick light, where it's positioned to fill the space behind and to the side of the subject matter. Now let's talk about positioning of your light sources within your indoor space. If you have a natural light source, you can position that in front of or even beside to the front of your subject matter. Then adding an additional light to the opposite side or to the opposite complementing side of your image will add that balance to the other side. What you're trying to do is have one light source come in. It's going to create some shadows on this side of the face. Then this light source will come in, balance out these shadows, and smooth out to make it look like a natural light source. Light is all about positioning and a relationship between given light and additional light. So your studio lights are the additional light, and your natural light from a window or from a skylight is going to be your natural light. If you're doing group photos, it is very important to balance the light from one side equally on the other side, because groups, multiple bodies in one image, is going to create shadows on the other bodies. So having as much light filled in, even two on the side, one on the camera, or two on the far side and one on the camera, maybe even something behind or above, as many light sources as you can to eliminate all unwanted shadows. By placing your light in front of, at the eye level, or slightly higher, you are eliminating any unflattering shadows as well. Pairing indoor lighting with exposure bracketing techniques in your camera can help you learn how to manipulate these indoor lighting techniques. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, just continue practicing. Set up a few just random things in your house and play with lighting. Play with how it creates shadows here and too harsh of highlights here. Move the lights back, move the lights forward, and play with the ways that the light is diffused and aggressive on your subject matter. You can use fabrics or even just different patterns to play with the light when you feel a little bit more comfortable with it. Just get creative. Photography is all about the manipulation of light. So when you're adding additional light, there's more to manipulate. So get creative, photographers. Feel free to leave in the comments below for your fellow photographers any tips and tricks you have for indoor lighting techniques. I do hope that this video was helpful, so if you learned something new, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell, and feel free to share with your other photographers. Until next time, I'm Jane Corley with Pick Visions. See you later, guys.